What is the best dumb phone? What is the best smartphone? What is the best crypto phone? What is the best phone of this year? Linux, privacy-based phone. There's a lot we're going to get into and break this stuff down. Why do I use this BlackBerry as one of my primary phones? Now, I've done videos on my phone system, and some of the things have changed. What are the best SIM options if you're in the US, or maybe you're in Europe, maybe you're in Asia or Africa or Antarctica? What options do you have? What are the most popular options that people are discussing? And what value can these phones provide to you? That's what we're going to discuss right here. So I'm going to break down some of these phone options. This is a question I get asked an absolute ton. It is something that's changing all the time, especially with 5G. We're going to talk about Fairphone. I get asked about this one a lot. Now, I'm going to break down several options throughout this video. I'm going to tell you the pros and the cons. I'm going to tell you who this potentially could be good for and who it isn't good for. Before we get too deep into that, I would like to say that the iPhone, the traditional iPhone, will not be on this list. I do have a lot of clients who like iPhones. iPhone SEs are great options if you're going to try to lock something down. The only real pro to iPhone is you can lock it in with Apple, but keep in mind, Apple will have access. The other key is making sure you're not doing too much on the phone, right? You're not putting too much private information. You really should have a dedicated phone for crypto that is locked down for crypto only. So if you're over here and you're trading the charts and you have your favorite phone or your favorite crypto apps, hopefully you have your institutional crypto accounts and all that stuff set up. It should be crypto specific. And really, I'm a big proponent of doing crypto on a computer. Far better options because you can lock down far more computers than phones. Phones are not designed to be locked down. I mean, I'm actually going to talk to you about a documentary that was recently made last year that's actually really good. And we're going to review a couple things here later in this video. I'm going to show you some of the reasons, because with Pegasus and some of the other mobile device forensic units that the governments around the globe have, phones are really highly penetrable, no matter what they say. So the Fairphone is one that I get asked about a lot because the price is, somewhat reasonable, I guess. The specs on it are pretty decent, and a lot of people have marketed it as a privacy phone, designed for living worry-free, and it kind of breaks down all the updates and expandable memory, et cetera, et cetera. This is a good example of a phone that is marketed as a privacy-based phone, marketed as something that could add value. It's basically, people are getting sick and tired of the big two, Samsung and Apple, and so they're looking for alternatives. This is just a skinned solution, and honestly, I would not recommend this unless the features of this phone. But keep in mind, this is just a run-of-the-mill smartphone. There's nothing special about the Fairphone, and so do not think that it is some great privacy tool. I've been asked about this dozens of times. This is not a privacy tool, and it's not a phone that I would recommend. The next one I get asked a lot is the Freedom Phone. Of course, Candace Owens, you can see her, she's attached. Again, Freedom Phone is pushed as a freedom-based or a conservative-based alternative because big tech tends to lean left. And so a lot of conservatives wanted their own thing. You can see here that it's preloaded with a bunch of very conservative-based apps like Newsmax, OAN, Rumble, DuckDuckGo. So it's got more of the conservacy. And since they do things like DuckDuckGo and a few other features, ClearOS, they sell this as a privacy-based phone. The thing is, this phone is just another basic skinned solution. And what you have here is you have the individuals who put together this phone decided, how do we market to people who are on the right? We preload the phone with a bunch of apps that they might want. There is nothing inherently privacy-based. There is nothing inherently valuable to this phone. The price point, I guess, is reasonable. The phone is, you can find this exact same phone on Alibaba. And what they did was they just changed the OS and they changed what apps and what things are preloaded. So it feels like it's not big tech, but it's the same phone. It's actually not a very good phone. Frankly, you look at the specs here, but it's the same phone. It's just skinned differently. So do I recommend the Freedom Phone? No, I do not. The Fairphone and the Freedom Phone, I wanted to start with these because these are good examples of marketing. You put some big influencers, you say, look, you're getting sick of big tech, we're going to give you a phone that's for you. But frankly, it's the exact same phone with apps that you could have installed yourself, and it's a low quality phone to boot. They're probably making a killing on this thing, and hey, good for them, free enterprise. The thing I want to talk about to get started, one of the most important OSs is GrapheneOS. Now, there's a handful of OSs you can use on different phones, but Graphene is a very, very popular one, and I recommend all of you get familiar with it. You can come over here to Graphene's website and learn a little bit about it. This is a very high quality option for most of you. This is where a lot of people start, and this is a good place for a lot of you guys to be able to actually start going down the rabbit hole of privacy and a phone that doesn't own you. You can see that it talks about a bunch of different smartphone options. Now, a lot of it talks about the Pixel, and a lot of you are going to say, isn't the Pixel a Google phone? Yeah, it's this phone right here, and you can use the Pixel 9 Pro and quite a few others. I've been bench testing this one right here, the Google Pixel 9 Pro, Pixel 9, and several others, and they work incredibly well. The way that Graphene is structured, it's built for these systems. And so even though you're on a quote unquote Google phone, you de-Google the phone and use Graphene, and it is a perfect match. It works flawlessly. And for most of you, especially if you're used to Samsung or Apple, these are going to be impeccable options, especially with what's happening in the world. We've got the government bearing down. We've got the social credit score systems coming. We've got, all these systems that Palantir is trying to create so they can create databases and they can kind of create classes of people, and making sure that your mobile phone doesn't control you. A lot of you guys are paying thousands of dollars for a phone, certainly $500 to $1,500 for a phone. And then you're paying a monthly fee of $40 or $80 or $300 or whatever you pay. And all that data and all of those metadata pieces are put together like a puzzle, and it becomes the real you. That's why all the talk is data. When I was a kid, no one ever heard the word data. I mean, it was a word, in a statistics class. It wasn't talked about. Oh, no one was like, oh, what about the data? Like if you were an accountant or you were some kind of statistician, but like the average person wasn't talking about their data. What I got my address and phone number in a phone book. For those of you under 30, it was a big yellow book that would have everyone's address and phone number, lest you call them and say, remove my information, and they remove your information. You know what I mean? There was no data. It's like, when I left the house, how do you get a hold of him? He has to come home. That's how. Like when I was a kid, my mom used to whistle. Yeah, we had a huge neighborhood. If I heard this faint whistle, because I was like my mom could power whistle. She would whistle every 3-4 hours when I was like 9-10 years old, and we'd come running home, and that was it. There was no phone. There was no nothing, right? It wasn't until I was in my later teens where like phones, cell phones and stuff, my teens started becoming a thing in the early 2000s. But, this is a world where your data is everything. And so keep that in mind. So starting with something like Graphene, I would not do anything personal on Apple or Samsung devices. I would not have all your personal information. Never bank on that. Never do any banking. Never do any of that type of stuff on a phone, because that is all completely and utterly controlled, and all of that has taken over. And again, we're going to talk about this in a minute, and especially with crypto. Especially with crypto, do not do all your crypto stuff on a phone. You shouldn't be. I got clients who are trading on phones. Like, we are in a very, very bad situation when people are getting so comfortable with these phones, because they can be overtaken and controlled, like I'm going to show you in a second. Now, another option is Unplugged. Privacy you can see. Now, this is getting a little better than the first two options that I showed you. And here's going to give you an example of the iPhone 16 Pro, and then the Galaxy S25. And you can see the third-party DNS requests, and you can see the packet of data. Again, already talking about data. But you can see the data packet, and you can see the third-party requests. And what this Unplugged phone does is it blocks a lot of the data puzzle. It really does block out a lot of the stuff. And then the Up phone also blocks every single third-party tracker, is the claim that it makes, compared to hundreds of trackers that infiltrate competitor phone. And they're not wrong here. This part is 100% true. We have done exhaustive bench testing, and we've done side-by-side tests, and they really do block a lot of that stuff, which is very, very valuable. However, there's a lot of other issues, protection at every level, and they kind of break this down. And they're doing the same thing that Brave does, where they really break down how many trackers and how many data requests and packet requests that they block. And don't get me wrong, that is very, very important, but that's really surface level stuff. And this phone is better than the traditional flagship phone, but this phone is also very surface level. It's again, this phone is a statistician, just like Brave, where it shows you all those trackers and all that stuff it blocked. But the average person doesn't even know what that means, and that is very surface level. Behind the scenes in the root metadata and in these apps and the way these apps function and the way the code set functions and the way that the OS functions is not inherently different. So you basically have a slightly better version of the same thing. Again, they're going to sell you on Brave browsers. I've done tier lists of the best browsers, and Brave is up there. Brave is solid, but it is not the best browser for a reason, because it does a lot of the surface level stuff, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. You have to put the whole pie together, and this phone does not do that. Now, what I do like is when phones have things of hardware, right? Analog hardware. There's a reason the federal government of the United States, the most powerful government in the world by tenfold, does most of its stuff still with classic analog things, because they know that the internet and these systems are not even remotely safe. And so to have these switches and to have things of that nature are good, and they're on the right track. And this is far better, in my opinion, than the iPhone and Galaxy it's comparing itself to. But it's basically trying to be too many things at once. It's trying to be a smartphone that is private and secure. And I hate to tell you guys, that's not possible. I know that we all wish we could use like a slick iPhone 17, iPhone 18, just perfect, and we were private and secure. You can use the best Samsung, and we were completely private and secure. I mean, is that too much to ask? We're paying all this money after all. Apparently, it is too much to ask. And guys, that's never going to happen. So if you think you're going to have a private and secure smartphone, you're out of your mind. These were not designed for that. These were literally designed. In fact, do you know who set the specifications of location setting, GPS setting? The federal government sets all of this in the United States. The United States sets the standard. And now with this new Palantir system that is tracking you, that's why I'm so hyper-focused on Ultra Ghost. I have so many corporate clients, so many even politicians in the United States. I talked about how I was recently over in Washington, and I had a meeting with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I've had a meeting with a lot of other people, because, guys, the metadata and what they're doing with these databases, even the politicians who are supposed to be the ones in power are scared to this. This is why being completely ghosted is so important. And so we look at these phones, we look at these devices, you can't have it both ways. Use your phone for the basic core functions. Use a dummy SIM or a reusable SIM on a semi-dumb phone, because a true dumb phone doesn't exist anymore. Those aren't actually made, and we're going to break that down here in a second, but this is really important to know. So this phone is a better version of what a smartphone should be, and it's closer, but it's still not a great option, because the fact is, what you do on it matters, the data you put on it matters, all these things matter, and this is completely and utterly crushing everything. And so this simply is just not going to work. Now, there's a lot of phones that are pushed like this, and I get probably 5 or 6 emails a week from people like, hey, I was on XYZ website. This is just a random website. I don't know anything about this site. but it's just like all the rest of them. Encrypted cell phone, raw, secure for discrete conversations. Sounds like some NSA, CIA level stuff, right? I mean, it's encrypted, it's secure. You have all of these different features. Not necessarily. You know, I've done videos on real secure phones and what you can use as a satellite phone. And that's what I would recommend if you're actually trying to do something that's encrypted and secure. There are real satellite options. This is different. And when companies sell you satellite options, like what T-Mobile's doing with Starlink right now, look, I like Starlink. I use Starlink all the time. It's one of my top 3 internet options. I use several different options for internet. Starlink is one of them. It's a great option. But Starlink on your phone, again, is not the option you think. So when they sell these, no, you need a direct satellite phone. These are not going to work. There's a reason that all government agents use satellite encryption and not this traditional over-the-air 5G, because this is no value. They're selling this phone for, what is that? How much is that? I think this is supposed to be, is this pound? I don't know. Who cares? It doesn't matter how much it is. I don't care if it's $5 or $5 million. You're not getting what you think you're getting. And you notice right here in the picture, is that the YouTube app? Is that Google Chrome? Yeah, dude. The worst browser ever made, Google Chrome. That's what they're... You see, I mean, these are not... They sell these as like spy agent tools and super secret spy encryption. No, none of these have any value whatsoever. It's all marketing. It's all packaging, just like the Freedom Phone and the Fairphone. So keep that in mind. I'm not picking on this phone or this website. This website could have some great stuff. But these type of phones that are marketed as these encryption, raw, secure, discrete conversations, that's not happening. That is not happening, first of all. Not on this phone. Not even close. You need the satellite options like what I've showed in the past. Now, another option is something like this. We provide smartphones and online workspaces that are private, sustainable, and fully open source. What I like about this is open source. They actually are going down the rabbit hole of open source and giving more flexibility, side swaps. Not as good as graphene, but way better than most options that are completely closed source. Now, what Samsung and Apple will tell you is everything is closed source for security reasons, and they're not wrong. Apple and Samsung are unbelievably secure internally. You're probably never going to have any other option. In fact, that's not true. I know you're never going to have any other option as secure as Apple. It's not going to happen. No other company has the money, not Linux, not anybody. But the security is for their benefit, not yours. So you need to also understand that there's both sides of that coin. While you're never going to be as secure as you are on an Apple device, you're also never going to have any privacy, any freedom, any flexibility, and the device is never going to truly feel like yours. So unless you plan on just being inside the Apple ecosystem for some reason, which I do not recommend, you're not going to have a lot of value. Again, I have clients who do high-level business. I have a lot of clients who do things on a worldwide scale. The iPhone SE is a favorite. In fact, I happen to know multiple princes in Saudi Arabia use iPhone SEs. Like, a lot of people use iPhone SEs as throwaway phones, as phones that can be used sparingly. I have an iPhone SE in my lineup. I also have an iPhone, the X, the 10. That's like probably peak iPhone. And now the 14, 15, 16, 17, it's all the exact same phone. It's absolutely wild that people are still buying these things. But it's that continuation. I like when some companies are trying to do things more open source. Keep your stuff safe. No, it's not going to happen. You're not going to have the security, and that's a fundamental problem. Would I buy into this ecosystem? No, I wouldn't, but I like the concept and the idea of going that way. Now, if I were to buy one traditional quote-unquote smartphone, I've said this before, this is the phone that I have, this is the phone that I use from a smartphone basis, the Librem. Purism Librem. Here is the Librem 5, and it is a phenomenal option. Linux. This is what, in my opinion, all phones should be. I've talked about this at length. I've talked about PureOS. I've talked about all of these things, but I had to touch on it. Is this the best, most spec'd out phone you will ever find in your life? No. But I've also talked about the hardware switches. I've talked about, let me tell you this. If a battery doesn't come out of your phone, you're in big trouble. If you can't take the battery out of your phone, you are in big trouble. That phone is tracking you 24/7. They are doing what's called laser GPS and laser data, even if your phone's off. And even if it's in a Faraday bag, there are some modern phones, the iPhone 16 and above, who are starting to have infrared features that can try to retrace your steps based on vibration and movement patterns, which is insane. I can't even begin to tell you how ridiculous this is. And they're AI chips. So when you pull the phone out and turn it back on, it can try to retrace what you did for the last 4 hours, what you did for the last 14 days when the phone was off. I've seen bench tests of this, and it's not perfect, but it is getting scary good. These phones are not for you. So the thing is, if you can't take the battery out, you're already on the wrong switch. If your phone does not have kill switches for things like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular signal, microphone, camera, et cetera, you're already off to the wrong path. So Purism, and they have different options here. It is a good option. I have used this for a long time. A lot of people talk about the Liberty phone. This is a very popular one. Is it expensive? Yeah, it's very, very expensive considering what most people would consider expensive at about, I think it's about $2,000. Do I think it's worth it? I do. For the right person. For the average person, no. I still prefer my Librem 5 in some ways, but I have this Liberty phone. I've been testing it for a little bit. I am going to be doing some hands-on reviews. I've done some hands-on reviews with phones in the past. Some of you may remember the Pine phone, which was an absolute pile of garbage. And I did that review, and I've done reviews on some other ones. Most of them don't hold up. I'm not a tech reviewer. I like to actually use something in the real world for a while. I like to travel with it. I like to trade crypto on it. I like to side swap apps. I like to see how far I can push it. I like to go through different OSs because I don't see a phone as something like, there's no point in doing a hands-on review of a basic out-of-the-box stock phone. There's no value. It's not your device. The device was set up to control you, to track you. So this is the main, what I recommend over here at Purism, and you can swap tons of different cards. I've talked about my ghost internet structures. I'll still use it on Netgears. I'll still use it on multiple travel routers. I'll even still use it on Starlink. But the Netgear is a great option to run hotspots for Wi-Fi. And then, of course, using SIM cards. And I'll still use SIM internet. I'll use several different third-party companies. I'll even use Black Sims in Europe and South America are the most popular to use those. That's what a lot of my clients do, and that's what I do over there as well. And I am going to be coming to Europe next month, and so I might be doing a couple of events over there with some clients. I've got a bunch of clients in Europe and a bunch of clients in Canada who are coming over because there's a lot going on over there. And I'm going to be doing some demonstrations. And these are the type of ones that I use currently. And yeah, I mean, currently there's a lot of different flexibility and a lot of different options, but these are some of them. Now, what I recommend for most of you is to walk into a gas station or to walk into, this is an example, this is a Walmart, right? Walk into this Walmart, walk into this gas station, and just simply pick up a phone. Just pick up a phone. This right here. Elderly mobile phone, senior, use that. This right here, Jitterbug, use that. Use any of these flip phones, but don't get it twisted. Track phone is a popular one. Here's what I want to make clear. You do know that a lot of these phones have 4 and 5G, right? So these are not the dumb phones from when I was a kid. I show you guys a lot of the, in fact, I'll put at the top of the screen, the Netgear that I used to use. And a couple of the phones that I've talked about before, all the burner phones that I've talked about before, I still use. And I still recommend, but keep in mind when you're using these 4 and 5G phones, they're still 4 and 5G phones. So you don't have the features of a quote unquote smartphone. The only benefit to these is you can throw them away easily because they're 20 bucks, 50 bucks, 40 bucks. So it's a very, if you're traveling, things of that nature, I recommend something like this phone right here, simplistic, and you can just chuck it, right? That's the only benefit. But it's not a dumb phone in the way that phones used to be dumb phones. And that's one thing that gets misconstrued regularly. It's that the average person can't afford to throw away an iPhone Air at $600 or $800 or $900. They can throw away a $20 phone. They can throw away a $30, $40 phone if they have to. It's not going to be that big of a deal. I do it several times a month. I'm throwing these things. I probably go through 30 phones a year, and that's fine. Now for me, things are different with like bench testing and traveling, and I never bring a phone back with me. I'll take it, destroy it, light it on fire, drill through it. I also leave phones along the trail. So there's a lot of different things you can do to make sure you're not tracked. Also, it starts with I never log into anything real. I always set up burner accounts on any apps I use, everything I use. So as I go, I can do that, and then I can log in from a secure computer. I can mirror things to my my Linux computer, so I have everything secure. I can put in all my security features on my computer, and I can mirror my phone to my computer, and I can mirror my computer to my Wi-Fi hotspot that is mobile internet, and then I have a built-in VPN, and then I can run that through like a secure node on the blockchain. And then my last video you definitely should watch where I talk about Monero and using Monero to buy stuff so you can actually run it through there. And so it gives you a lot of flexibility, but keep in mind, a lot of you guys are looking for a smartphone that you can just pick up and say, hello, I'm privacy secure, I'm encrypted like the NSA, like you see in your favorite James Bond movie. And that doesn't exist unless you have a $1 billion black budget and you're a government contractor and have special clearance from the president of your country. This is not a movie, so you need to understand these things. So for most of you, walking in and getting a dumb phone is a really good option. And let me show you why. Let me show, not just Pegasus. In fact, Pegasus is mostly outdated. We're about 4 generations above Pegasus. Everyone I've been talking to when they're doing these bench tests and stuff, we're way above Pegasus. And that's something that a lot of people are not understanding.
Big spyware companies say they sell this tech only to governments, but this multi-billion-dollar industry is mostly unregulated. The most advanced spyware can turn your smartphone into a spy in your pocket. It can copy everything and record you without you ever knowing.
And it always does.
Disappear without a trace.
Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist Ronan Farrow produced the documentary.
Ronan Farrow.
Is there a difference between the Salt Typhoon hack that's been in the news so much and what you're covering, what you report on here?
Well, there is, but there's also a shared theme here. Our data is becoming more and more accessible, porous, and that goes for critical national security sensitive infrastructure. It goes for
the problem is Palantir with these new AI bots have been proven to not be secure, but they've already been given the green light to collect your data. And a lot of you have been asking me, well, Palantir, that's the US, right? No, dude, are you kidding? There is no, these borders only matter when it comes to controlling the people. The US has been controlling data for the entire planet. In fact, the US actually has more data on people outside the US than inside the US because we have no laws. We do not care about spying on your country because there's nothing you can do. Even if your government finds out, what are you going to do about it? The United States could dog walk every other country militarily. It's not particularly close. The stuff you think we have, we're 50 years ahead of that. And that's out of the bounds of the people running the stuff in Pentagon. Like, even the stuff in China is only 10, 15 years ahead. We are so far ahead of the world, it's ridiculous because we spend all of our money on military stuff. The United States is basically one giant military base, and half the people don't know it. The amount of drones we have, the amount of technology, so it's ridiculous. So that's the scary part, what you should be most worried about. And this is why I'm so laser focused on Ultra Ghost, and I'm so laser focused on getting completely out of the system. And I'm helping as many people as possible get completely out of the system. If you're not Ultra Ghosted already, check out the first link down below. We're actually going to have to be changing the program soon. The new website is coming underway because of all the changes. But I'm working with people that I never thought I'd be working with. I'm meeting people that I've never thought I'd be working with because the amount of people getting freaked out about this is absolutely wild. But yeah, look at this
data
stuff.
Held by major telecom firms. And it goes for what's examined in this documentary, which is our phones. which fascinated me as a reporter who's dealt with various forms of surveillance. And then when I saw that the bleeding edge of that technology, of those kinds of efforts, were so advanced that you could turn any phone into a listening device if you have the resources, I realized.
And that's what I'm saying. It really is any phone. Any phone on 4G and 5G, they can turn into a listening device. So there is no perfect phone option. It's why I'm always switching SIM cards. It's why I'm always switching phones. And it's why I preach at the top of the highest mountain that you should not have a phone with you very often. You should use it, get rid of it. My core phone, I only turn on when I know my kids are gone and in a place and I need to have them have access to me. That's it. You know how many times I make phone calls a year? Maybe 8. Everything is done encrypted. There are a couple rare circumstances, but I don't make traditional phone calls. Everything is done through a signal or a session. Everyone I know, it's basically we're doing everything through tunnels, encrypted tunnels, or we're just not doing it because this is how ridiculous. And I tell people all the time, everything you do, you should never make phone calls if you can help it. And everything you do should be a bare minimum, even if you do nothing else. This is like the tip of the iceberg, signal and session, but that bare minimum. You should not be SMS texting. You should not be calling people on the phone. And you should not have all your real data on your phone. You notice they talk about phones, they rarely, because computers are so much easier to lock down. It's why they hate computers. Because even a Mac, all right, a MacBook Pro, even, I hate to say it, but even a Windows computer that you put Linux on, you have options. Now, Windows is trying to remedy that with the new Windows 11 and all of their remote viewing, and it's getting tough. And I'm not saying Apple's great. I'm not saying, Linux is still the best. I talk about that a lot. I'm a huge fan of Linux. But even Linux, you have to really lock these things down, but it's possible. That's what I'm saying. It's possible. With phones, it's literally not possible. And that's why I use things like this BlackBerry, because I can swap SIMs out regularly, discard the SIMs. And the thing with the BlackBerry is it's just enough to barely work. I can't use almost anything on here, but there's 2 messaging apps I can side swap. You don't see it here, but I can dongle with the with a SD, and then I can side swap to do basic messaging. Most of the BlackBerry features do not work. I just like the keyboard. This barely works, but it works on just the 4 things I use it for. I would never hook this up to traditional internet. I would never hook this up on any of my real accounts because it would have no security, but it works as close to a real phone as I can get. And again, I'm old school. I love these keyboards. That's why I use it. It barely works, but it works perfectly for the 4 things I use it for. Every other phone works against you. And I'm not saying this doesn't work against me either. There are a lot of flaws, but I'm trying to find the best of the worst. It's why I use 6 or 8 different phones regularly for different purposes to compartmentalize.
Well, this is not an incidental issue. This is not some esoteric human rights problem that's far away. This is coming for all of us.
You've got an
Right
example
now.
in the documentary. This is a member of the European Parliament from Catalonia, which is a region in northeastern Spain. This politician favors independence from Spain. You were with him the moment he found out his phone had been hacked. Let's take a look.
Ja tenim el resultat i tenim 2 infeccions confirmades. Tenim una al voltant del
Way worse in Europe. Easy in Europe.
Al voltant del 27 de juny.
And Canada. Canada, Australia.
When does it look like you were infected?
I have to check it's a date, but around that day, I was appointed member of the European Parliament.
How do you feel knowing that you may have been compromised in this way?
Well, I feel surprised and angry at the same
You should.
time.
Ronan, who's likely to have hacked that phone and to what end?
Well, as you pointed out, in
Government.
Spain, there is an autonomous region, Catalonia, the capital is Barcelona, where a big swath of the population wants independence for that territory. And it doesn't really matter what you think of that prospect politically. The point is, there's peaceful activists and politicians and protesters and civil society members, journalists covering the issue, who wound up in a massive surveillance dragnet. The Spanish government did admit to at least some of the hacking, and there was a firing of an intelligence chief there. And I just want to point out, this isn't a Spain issue. we've seen a string of these kinds of scandals.
Whether you're a fan of Ronan Farrow or not, I do recommend you guys check out that documentary. I think it's like on HBO. If you haven't seen it, it's actually very eye-opening. A lot of you will probably get a lot out of it. And this continues happening. You know, every time there's a hack, they blame China, they blame Russia. But the reality is it's mostly the U.S. China and Russia, especially Russia. Russia is very old school. Russia's a lot more depleted than people. Russia basically just has the big bombs. So does China and U.S. Outside of that, Russia does not have... You're more likely to be India. You're more likely there's huge farms in the Indo-Pacific that are popping up. These hacker units, but the black budgets from the U.S. is funding most of this. That's the wild part. Is all roads continuously lead back to the United States. The United States, unfortunately, is doing this consistently, and so that's one thing to keep in mind. What I will say is, you know, check out this documentary. Understand that there's no perfect phone. I would argue that this right here is as close as you're going to get. Again, the Librem 5, like I showed, is what as close as you're going to get to something great. But even that, you need to be careful. You need to be using your Faraday bags. And I've done videos at length about all these things. You need to make sure that you understand that there's no going back. It's over now. It's over. With these phones, it is absolutely over. It is come and gone. Now they are literally working against you. These Palantir systems, these data farmers, this is a $1 trillion industry, and AI is going to make this go supersonic in Gen 1 of 2026. This is why getting all your data out of the system, because it's never coming out after that. No matter what you can eat, where you can go. You know, we talk about these 15-minute cities that they're actively trying to build. Talk about these little micro breakout communities. These things are getting, talking about controlling travel. I don't think there's going to be public. A lot of people ask me about air travel. You think there's going to be air travel in the next decade? You're out of your mind. Maybe if you're rich, but the average, they're going to let these airliners go bankrupt in the next recession, and it's all by design. Because they don't want you to be able to travel the way that you can travel now. They don't want you to have the freedom you have the freedom now. This is why they're dividing the U.S., because they want U.S. states to start dividing against each other. They don't want Californians going to Texas and Texas going to California. They don't want New Yorkers going to Florida and Florida going to New York. They want to keep division and separation, because populations that are divided and fighting amongst each other are easy to control. They've already done this in Europe. You guys have a bunch of little micro regions and micro countries. None of you have any power or anything on your own. That's why you try to create the EU, and then the EU actively works against you. The US experiment is brilliant, and it's the best experiment to ever exist, but they're trying to break that down as we speak, and they're doing a really, really, really good job. And the phones are pretty much the catalyst of this. So you need to understand, I see a lot of these people on the internet, oh, this phone's got privacy and it's got digital security. I want to do my stuff private, and I got a VPN on my phone, and it's got it built in, and it blocks trackers and packets. Look, that's better than nothing. I'm not hating on that. I went through and showed you all that just now. But that's scratching the surface. It's kind of like an iceberg where 90% of the mass is below the surface. That's like that little 10% where it's like, yeah, that's better than average, but it doesn't really do anything in the grand scheme of things. It's not really going to save you or protect you or help you in the grand scheme of things. So I wanted to really break that down, because I get all these questions so much, and I can't possibly respond. I've been talking to a lot of people in DC. The telecommunication laws are just getting completely ripped apart. The president of the United States is issued more executive orders than pretty much any other president ever, and he is attacking the telecom laws. He's attacking the privacy laws because it goes against the agenda. And whether you believe in Project 2025 or not, if not Project 2025, why Project 2025 shaped? If not Agenda 2030, why Agenda 2030 shaped? You know what I mean? That's like telling me that this poker chip is not a circle. If not a circle, why circle shaped? If this is not a playing card, why is it playing card shaped? And that's what they're trying to tell you, is don't believe your eyes. Don't believe your ears. Don't believe what you hear. That's why they're suing every single media company who's ever said anything about them ever. That's why they're creating backroom deals. It's supposed to be the party of freedom and free speech, but the reality is that is eroded greatly. That has waned greatly. That has basically been removed completely. And so this is my opinion on these things, but you guys need to fully take, I don't really want any more emails about what is the private and secure phone. There isn't one. Anybody who tells you there's a privacy-based phone is lying. Now, there are phones that are a little bit better, and I showed you a few options here. I've seen, I could show you a dozen more phones, but it doesn't matter. None of them are better than the Purism. None of them. And I want to be clear, just before somebody says it in the comments, no, I have no financial interest in this company. I'm not getting paid by this company. I don't know anybody at this company. I've never met anybody at this company. So just want to make that clear. I'm just a happy consumer, and it's hard to make me happy as a consumer because so many of these products are garbage. And again, I've consumed many others, and I've talked about them on this, and I've gotten a lot of pushback from companies. I've gotten threats and lawsuits. I don't care. My lawyers will absolutely steamroll them. Lawsuits, whoopity-doo. I don't care less. Whenever I'll countersue somebody till the end of time. I don't care. Anybody stupid enough, I'm always game. So yeah, I'm not concerned. I talk about these things, but this particular one, easy. This is easily a clear winner. Is it the most specced out phone? Look at these specs. These specs are not going to, you're going to be like, what am I? You're not paying for the specs necessarily. You look at these specs and you're like, how is this? It's because you have the closest thing to privacy and security. You have something you can actually use. I know. You want an iPhone 17 Pro Max Supersonic, and you want it to be $8, and you want it to be more private and secure than this phone. But it doesn't benefit these phone makers to do that because you are the product. You have to be their product. And so you need to keep that in mind. And that's one thing to understand. So get all of your data out of the system, get completely ghosted, get ultra ghosted, get everything taken out of the system. The stuff I've been hearing from people in Washington, D.C. is scary. A lot of people won't go on record. I don't do interviews because I can't stand them, but I've actually recently been trying to cobble together some interviews and some clips. I got some clips with a couple of congressmen and congresswomen that I'm trying to cobble together, and I got permission to use them because I think some of this stuff's important. I'm not going to do full-blown interviews, but I am going to start injecting some of these clips, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you're checking back to my channel regularly because there's no chance that anybody's ever going to push my... So make sure you're checking back regularly. But yeah, and the number one comment I get is, hey, I didn't know you were making videos lately. I never get notifications. Yeah, nobody does. There's no chance. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to try to interject some of these clips and some of the topics that I'm going to be talking about because I'll tell you what, I've been doing this for longer than almost anybody. And most of my competition has tucked their tail between their legs and ran in the mountains and hid because we are always under attack. I've been under attack, so much pressure this year. It's ridiculous. I do not care. If I lived in any other country, I'd be dead by now. For sure, I'd be dead by now because I live in the only country with laws. People ask me if I'm going to leave the United States. Not publicly, because I'd be dead for sure. And because you have no freedom anywhere else. You can't say anything else anywhere else. Look what happened to everyone else who's ever done anything ever. So that's the reality. And most of my competition has hightailed it out. And there are some great people in this space to me, and there's some other companies that are ghosting people and doing stuff, but they're not as public because they're scared to death and they're petrified because they don't want to use their freedom of speech. They don't want to, they don't want to be under attack. They don't want to feel like they're under attack all the time. And that's my entire existence, unfortunately. But if I want a better future for my kids, that's the only option. That's literally the only option, is to come out here and talk about these things. And they're tricking people into thinking this stuff is real, and it's just simply not real. It's just simply not real. There is no such thing as a privacy-based phone anymore. There's just the best possible option. This option, GrapheneOS, those are great options. Dumb phone, the closest thing you can get to a dumb phone, those are great options, but you need to understand what that means and kind of how that thing works. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. Putting out new content regularly. Going to be putting in some of these little micro clips. Again, I don't want to, it's not full interviews, but it's clips with me and some of the, I'll tell you, when politicians are scared, it's a problem, because that's the other illusion. The only politicians in Congress who really have power are the leadership. Everyone else just falls in line. You have no actual representation if you're in the United States, and if you're around the world. I just showed you that little clip where your freaking politicians are getting hacked and taken over, and manipulated day one. All these politicians in Europe, they're told what to do by the elites and they go in lockstep. Why do you think they never change? You get a brand new politician and somehow they completely agree with the last one. The system is working exactly how it was designed. Understand that. So this is a great option. There, really the computer is the option. The computer is the move. The phone is not the move. The phone you use bare minimum. The computer you can lock down, and that's where you do all your tech stuff. You should be using a computer 9 times out of 10. Get off the phone. The phone is working against you. Have an amazing day. Make sure that you understand the privacy is right and it's right needs to be protected. If you don't protect it, I don't protect it. You can bet that these freaking demons are not going to protect it. And I'll see you guys in the next video.